Hello, dear partners. Thank you for joining us this morning and welcome to our training, which was designed for you by an international development expert, Denise Bazilevych, with a background on policy developments, technical regulations, and advocacy issues in Ukraine and the Eastern Partnership countries. The webinar will be an hour and a half long. This meeting is recorded, as you heard, and will be posted in our Facebook group. If you have any questions during the training, please feel free to write in chat or voice them when there is this discussion time. The floor is yours, Denise, and enjoy the training.
Thank you very much, Tina, Maria, Gamarjova, Доброго ранку. Dear friends, colleagues, it's a great privilege to be this morning with you. Unfortunately, only online. I really much adore Georgia, Tbilisi, because last time when I was in Tbilisi, it was also East and West project when we have a coalition work with Georgian business associations. It was very rewarding experience because it was really two-way movement, right? Because you have advanced a lot, and our expertise, our knowledge with what can be, how we can contribute to your capacity building, it was really good. Now I'm ready to communicate with you, and I hope it will be also rewarding with for all of you today. And as Tina said, just please free to stop me, ask me whatever channel you wish, right? Because I have some background, some approaches to capacity building, to advocacy and lobbying and GR, but it's up to you how we can just put it into the channel which is be more relevant and appropriate. Just a few words about myself. I'm a lobbyist, and I just want to ask if any of you are lobbyists also. Are there any lobbyists in the room?
Please
just
raise your hand.
Raise your hands if you can name your lobbyist. No, we don't have lobbyists in the room.
I think we are all lobbyists. We are lobbying for our sector beneficiaries' interests. So I think we are all lobbyists here.
You are lobbyists. Okay.
I agree to Ms. Russo. We are all lobbyists. We want or not, we are all lobbyists.
Thank you, Russo, and thank you, Elasha. So that's why I was just asking you how you feel yourself. Are you a lobbyist? Because I can openly say that I'm a lobbyist because in 2007, 2008, I was doing a fellowship in the Congress, United States Congress, and I spent a year working for a congressman. And on that time, I really saw how lobbyists work, how advocacy work, how they do meet with lobbyists and associations, and how they articulate their cases and present their voices in the Congress. And you know, some of these mechanical and technical parts I will elaborate on today, because it's like Christomatia, it's a much chance for all of us could be, and actually it's also applicable whether in America, Ukraine, Georgia, whatever. So the foundation and approaches are all the same. And after I came back to Ukraine, I didn't want to get back to the presidential administration. It was Yushchenko by the time. I was a part of his team. And I started to work as a lobbyist or advocacy manager for USAID. Then I went to commercial company, one of the major commercial companies in Ukraine in terms of machinery building. And we have 13,000 people and 6 factories there. So it was a very great case to advocate and lobbying for in the government, in the parliament. And after then I was the USAID, also expert in fostering Ukraine reform, economic reform for small and medium-sized business. Now I GIZ expert. GIZ, you know, is the German now Ministry of Economy, and I'm also involved in technical regulation. And I work as a consultant for one of major Ukraine logistical companies, also just provide consultation. So I have a combination of working in the government, working in NGO and for NGO, and training and providing specialization and consultation in this field. So you know, if it comes up to any kind of ideas or questions to one of these points, we can elaborate on that further. If you just allow, I want to start my presentation and share my screen with you. And I name our meetings today, as you see, so very like provoking. Can we cook the borscht with the government? If yes, then how? You know this proverb that "сними кашу не сваришь," right? So for us, it's important to know: can we сварить кашу с властью? Can we cook? Can we? But borscht is more close to Ukraine and Georgia. So that's why I suggest that we follow this agenda. And the first slide is like ingredients, right? It's all about ingredients. We know all these ingredients. We know how it likes. We know how to treat them. But what is the main thing of borscht? How do you think? What is the main secret?
It's water.
Water, water is an environment, atmosphere, right?
Maintaining color.
What else?
Maintaining color.
No, boiling.
Boiling.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is a recipe, right? So in which order we put the ingredients? We all know these ingredients, but if we put somewhere first, we don't have this taste, this flavor if we go through the procedure. So it's all about the lobbying, advocacy, and GR and the coalition building. We know separately different ingredients. I'm sure I saw your commitments, your expectations in the table, and which goals and assignments you have with your associations, coalitions. I bet you know all these ingredients, all these instruments. But the idea is how to put them in order. So we have this product, we have the borscht. Borscht very delicious and very flavorful for everyone, and especially for the government one, right? Because we don't have any problems just to engage with the government. I think you have all telephone numbers of ministers, deputy ministers in your smartphones. It's no problem just to send them SMS or in WhatsApp. But in which order we use the instrument is very important. What we put there is very important. How we engage them is very important, because, you know, if we can just DDoS the government services and public officials with our messages, at one point that will just maybe block us or something else, or just ignore us. So our idea and our vision is not to be ignored, but to be heard and listened by the government. But in this way, we have also to listen to the government, and we'll see how we can go further. As according to our agenda, I want just to stop a bit on definitions, because definitions is very important. We have to be on the same plate, on the same table when it comes to definitions. What do we mean by which terms? Now it's a very, you know, a significant work in Ukraine around drafting legislation on lobbying. Actually, I know that legislation in Georgia on lobbying was adopted in 1998. Do you know about this? No, you have active legislation on lobbying. And actually it was Baramidze, with whom we met the other day, like maybe 7 years ago. And he asked, how is your legislation? Because he was one of the authors. He asked me, how do you know about this legislation? No one in Georgia knows about this. So it's all about legislation. Legislation should be famous and should be effective, right? Now in Ukraine, it's all about definitions. When it comes to lobbyists, advocacy, or GR, I think that you know these differences for this. But I just wanted to stop for a few minutes on these issues. When it comes to advocacy, these are activities aimed at representing and protecting the interests of separate social groups by organizing indirect influence on the formation and implementation of public policy. So protecting of interests of separate social groups, right? Lobbying is the professional activity which for a fee is focused directly on legal influence on the formation and implementation of public policy in the client's interest. So the keywords here: fee, directly legal influence, and client's interests. When it comes to fee, it can be whatever kind of remuneration. It can be a salary, it can be a grant, it can be a contract fee, it can be whatever. When it comes to client's interest is not only about commercial companies, it's also NGOs, because we have assignments. It's about business associations, because we have members who contributed with their fee, with their membership fees. So we protect their case. We elaborate these cases before the public officials, and they provide us with mandate for us to be heard by the government, but it's our capacity how we can be professional in terms of how we deliver our messages. And GR, it's very similar to PR, is a permanent dialogue between business, authorities, and society in order to strengthen trust between them and meet their interests and needs. GR is a long-standing relations with public officials. It's not only just when we need them, we just drop an email, we just want to meet with them, but it's a long-lasting relations, like a PR, right? If you have PR services, PR departments in your association, companies, whatever, you have a long-standing relation with SME with media sectors, with journalists, with experts. Here is as well, because public officials, they really appreciate when you have this permanent dialogue with full of trust, right? When they know who you are, that they know that you keep your words, and you know them, because what are their needs, what are their expectations, what are their interests? It's like very human relations. So these three categories are different, basically. And here we would, stop on GR because we want to build a trust with the government, right? And advocacy and lobbying we will apply when we have our case structure formed and ready to be presented. Do you agree with such approach, with such definitions, or you have some other comments on this?
No, I think it reflects correctly everything. No comment. However, then if the fee is the keyword for lobbying, then advocacy then is done free of charge, correct? Then it's not done by association, because even association members are paid. Then it's done by social groups on a voluntary basis. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So you're right. Absolutely. And we have a misunderstanding here and manipulation with advocacy and lobbying, because we have NGOs who said we are not lobbyists, we are NGOs, we are doing advocacy. But we have a big commercial companies, big oligarch companies who have established their NGOs and say, we are also NGOs, we are also protecting the rights, social groups, social interests, okay. And we don't get money. So you are right, absolutely. When it comes to advocacy, is a movement, is the activity and formulation of environment for this to make changes happen, right? Lobbying is already the course, is the specific professional campaign aimed at specific group of people with specific interests, and of course it should be professionally prepared. Absolutely. If we move forward, just for your understanding of what it comes to international approaches to definitions of these issues, we have I think you know the Transparency International organization. So worldwide they have branches everywhere, and Transparency International, they provided some kind of model legislation or model framework for regulation of lobbying and advocacy. And look what it will be a link here in your presentations to all these materials. You can see how they elaborate on this. But when it comes to lobbying, it's very interesting. They name lobbying as the term should cover any direct or indirect communication, even indirect communication with a public official that is managed or directed with the purpose of influencing public decision making. You know, so Transparency International even recommend to national authorities to consider lobbying as a direct and indirect influence. With free and payment, they don't differentiate between them. So it's very interesting because it's the formation of legislation approach is being progressed and developed since the last 10 years, and this manipulation between advocacy and lobbying is very strict right now. So when we move further to the coalitions, because I know that you are now forming coalitions, could you just raise hands if you already established your coalitions, if you have ready to go coalition with your association? David, yeah? Rusa, yes. Marika, yes. So you have already coalition forms. Hatuna, thank you. You have already coalitions. It's now we just maybe refer to coalitions. What does it mean coalition? Because in Ukraine, for example, we treat coalition as something permanent, something stable, something with stamp, official stamp, with president of coalition, with first deputy head of coalition, with signature, with all this chart and all this stuff, all the rest. When it comes to European and American style, I prefer American style, right? When I was in Congress on the Hill, I met hundreds of coalitions. Hundreds of coalitions we just establish, sparkling, doing their job, their assignment, and just split. And again, when there is a case, they assemble, do their job, and again dissolve, split, right? So is the matter of this configuration like a puzzle, like a constructor, yeah? You have different formulae, you have different variations of this. And of course, you know each other. Of course, you know members of association. Of course, you know other market players, other stakeholders. And it's very easy to find this compromise and coalition built between you, among you. In Ukraine, for example, we, as I said, we prefer something long-standing. We have coalition of SME. It's a long-standing coalition with official website, with coordinators, with some kind of organizational structure. So I cannot say that it's good or bad. It's up to you how to use it, right? But generally, you have different interests. If you present associations, you have different interests inside your associations. If you have coalitions, you have different organizations inside the coalitions. But what is the most important thing that they unite around you? Is the core beliefs, is the core assignment, core expectations, right? Because alone, it's very hard to do it. It's very hard to achieve this. And when you're in coalition, you just leave behind your interests, you just leave behind your ambitions. You just became essential part of this coalition with 1, 2, or 3 of priorities. Because of course, generally you can have different positions, different interests, but now you are assembled in coalition to have 1 or 2 or 3 options which are united your members. So advocacy coalitions are made of actors who are united by policy core beliefs and seek to translate those beliefs into policy. And these actors strategically coordinate their actions to influence the policy process. Right? So core belief is the core value of this, and strategically, so you have coordination of coalition in a strategic way, right? How do you now coordinate your coalitions? Do you have the chairman of the coalition or coordinator coalition, or do you don't have formal structures?
We have coalition leader that leads the meetings and plans the next steps together with the coalition members. It's a very, I don't know, basic coalition with not a formal structure or anything. Just we have a coalition leader that helps others to coordinate their activities and plan the next steps.
Just in terms of organization structure, right? To have to moderate the meetings and to make.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Dennis, can I say something?
Sure.
Okay, so because there's only 2 of us in our coalition, that's the European Business Association and the Infrastructure Coalition. We've just had one take the lead, which in this case is our partner, the Infrastructure Coalition. But there's something else that we're doing at the moment is that we have a €150,000 grant now, and one of the things that we're doing is we're setting up a European Economic Cooperation platform, which I've just realized listening to your lecture is also probably could be defined under the definitions you've given us, that could be defined as an advocacy group. This will be open to all business associations in Georgia as a platform with the EU ambassador and other ambassadors in the government to raise issues relating to the operation of business within Georgia, specifically as relates to the European Union. One of the things that I just realized listening to your lecture is that this probably could be considered as a coalition, an advocacy coalition, if we take from that platform a recommendation to the government. One of the things we're actually talking about now, and maybe SIPE can help us, it would be useful, I think, for you to see what's happening in Georgia as well, is how we organize that, because we don't want to give a single or a person or organization the right to speak for this group, because otherwise people won't join, perhaps, because there could be, say, 40 organizations within this. So that's just, I just throw that out there because it might be of interest to the rest of the group, that's all.
Thank you, David, very much for your comments. And actually, I would refer to European component and to the ecosystem development. And as you said about this economic European platform, it's one of the ecosystems.
There is some background noise,
yeah, it's me. It's me.
Can you hear? David, if you just mute your phone because we have the noise, the background noise. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much again for your comment. It's about one of the points, very important essential points I will refer to, and the European component, European expertise, and joining the European ecosystems. It will be further in our discussions, but basically when it comes to EBE, I don't know, I forgot and don't know how it's in Georgia right now, but EBE in Ukraine is very reluctant to build coalitions, actually. And it was our case with the government when we built coalitions with EBA, American Chamber of Commerce, and other major business associations around ACA. You know what does mean ACA mean? That? Yes, this visa-free, industry visa-free regime. According to the CFTA, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova have this ACA agreement, conformity and assessment agreement, when Georgian product can go to European Union without technical barriers, right? So we have this agenda, we have this legislation in Ukraine Parliament. So we built this coalition between EPA, SEC, and our major associations, and we were very successful in bringing this case. So it's one of the issues when EPA was, eager to join these broad coalitions. But according to who is the chairman, who is the member, yeah, absolutely. And Russo and David, you are right here, because you don't need to have a chairman. You have coordinator, even 2 or 3 coordinators. When it comes to expert group, you don't need to have an expert group leader, but coordinators of expertise, right? Maybe 2 or 3 people. When it comes to PR or GR, it can be also the same. So have the mandate provided to the members of your coalition, so everyone could feel them involved. It's very important. So it's all about trust and understanding how you make the decision, how you communicate the decision among the members of coalition, which kind of channels of communication you have provided. It can be a landing page, it can be internal chats, it can be Telegram channel, whatever, but you have to provide what are you doing here inside, right? So when we move forward further with the agenda, because now it's very important to see what agenda you have for business association, for your coalitions, and listen, in the government. Because did you notice how it's difficult to lobby or advocate for your case if it is not in the government's agenda? It's very hard. Very often it's impossible. For you, you have to understand the following messages. that your agenda has to be adjusted to the government priorities. So you have the government program, right? As every government, you have the Georgian program, government, Ukrainian government, whatever. You have legislative initiative plans. You have sectoral plans. You have central executive agency programs. So please monitor and see what is your stakeholder, appropriate stakeholder, how this stakeholder is drafting their agenda, his agenda. So if you just want to impose something outside, which is not in the agenda, it will be very, very difficult and very resource consuming issue just to persuade them to include into agenda and then to implement. So it will be much more better when your case, when you're interested, when your sector is just pushed there. For example, I saw about tourism, right? Mountain tourism, right? If you just put the mountain tourism into legislative agenda, into the government agenda, it will be much more better to advocate and see what would be the model and format of this bylaw or legislation. I saw the expectation about procurement, right? If you put the procurement line there, how you want to structure and get it formulated, it may be much more easier to help to advocate for this case. So you have to bring next, you have to bring not problems but solutions, right? First, you have to consider and to insert your case into agenda. Then you have to demonstrate that you understand the problems, of course, but you understand the solutions, right? For example, it was very interesting case in Ukraine. We have a very close cooperation with Minister of Economy. And we have a coalition and very broad platform, Industry for Ukraine platform, which is something that advocate and lobby for progressive manufacturing, for digital manufacturing, right? And we were asking the government to elaborate the statute, the legislation on Industry 4.0 centers to establish in oblasts, in regions of Ukraine. We were doing this for half a year. When they did this, they put into the government and they said, now we have approved at the government level the line that we have to elaborate the draft normative act of Industry 4.0 centers, but we have 2 weeks for doing this. Please provide us with the final draft of this document. Listen, the government asks us to provide with a document of legislation. So you have to be ready for this, right? You have to be ready that your issue should be in line, in priorities. You have to provide not problems, but also the vision for your solutions. You have to have envisaged necessary resources and expertise. So later we will see how we can help this to coordinate, because we have resources map of the coalition, right? Who can be who can contribute with which part of expertise? How to make our expectation more visible, more feasible, right here. And as David said, you have to align with and refer to DCFTA. You know what does DCFTA mean, right? Deep and comprehensive free trade agreement between Georgia and European Union, between Ukraine and EU, between Moldova and EU. Now, DCFTA, for example, for us is like magic stick, right? Because DCFTA basically it contains a number of solutions, a number of obligations, but the government and Ukrainian parliament are very reluctant to implement this. We can foster, we can articulate, and we can help with the government, that our coalition, our associations can help you to implement this or this case, this or this line, because we have understanding how to do this, because we have kind of imagination how to bring these solutions. But we need from you, of course, administrative resources. We need your contribution, that you have to be the leaders of it, and you have to be the owners. The government should be the owners of this project, but you can initiate them. So it's important to understand, if you refer to agenda, so please first work with the government to include your case into agenda. When it is included, it will be much more easy to communicate with them, because they will after that ask you and approach you. Please provide with expertise, please provide it with factors, with arguments, with solutions, with whatsoever. So this GR component is starting to work, to cooperate. So do you have any question at this point with working with the agenda, with the government? Do you feel it's relevant to your cases? and necessary to understand this? What's your opinion? Is it much more easy for you to lobby and to advocate for something in the agenda in comparison to what it's absent? Or let me just reframe my question. Do you have all your interests in agenda of your coalitions in priorities of the government?
No.
No. So just refer to our points. So see how we can move them and feel them engaged and to put it into this agenda. Thank you, Russo, very much. So in Ukraine, we have, as I mentioned about long-lasting coalition, we have a very actually influential coalition of SME sector. It's really influential, and sorry for this blurry banner, but recently we had a very big forum on SME, not even like small medium-sized business, but micro and small business, to present their cases and to fight against some strong legislation provided by the Ukrainian parliament, in Ukrainian government. Now they want a bit regulate a lot of issues because they have to earn money, because there's a pandemic, because they do, they have a shadow economy increasing. So that's why they just try to put additional pressure onto business. And we have this coalition of SME sector, which just gathered together with different names of associations and presented their cases here. For example, one of the panels was the name first, think small first. And David, you must know about this, because think small first is the European message, European approach to small and medium size, to small sector. So you have to think about small business first and then see how they can be supported by your policy. And we have members of parliament, heads of the committees, deputy ministers, and they were obliged to present and to listen to the cases, but the cases already were formulated. The agenda was discussed, and it was incorporated in the agenda of the parliament and the agenda of the government. So it was much easier to articulate about these issues. A bit later, I will present to you how this policy framework and papers were discussed, but the general framework that we have the forum when everything was ready, right? It's again about the Bosch components. We know separate components very good, but how to assemble them so they can bring a product, so can be beneficial to everyone, it's a really big art. So when this panel discussions, when the forum was ready, a lot of discussions, preliminary consultations with all stakeholders, with policy papers, with draft legislations, visual infographics, it was ready. It was accumulated a big resonance around this event. So all these public officials were photo and video fixed to commit, to advocate and to protect these ideas and further develop it at their competencies at their governmental levels. So that's why I think it was a very bright case how to use such platforms and in which order. Now about order. So as we were taught in Washington, and I continue teaching this in Ukraine and in other countries, we have 4 components of effective influence. We have policy, we have politicians like individual personalities, even we can say, or stakeholders. We have procedures, we have process. Each of these components is very important and should be very timely, right? For example, when we start with the policy, I have a few questions for you. What policy tools do you develop in your organizations? Which kind of formulation of policy do you prefer? Do you use in Georgia environment, in your environment? What is more efficient for you, for your associations, coalitions?
What do you mean by what policy tools do you develop?
How communicate with the government officials? So I think you write letters. you write some position papers or some, how do you frame your vision? You present it, which documents?
We do policy briefs. Like currently we are doing this policy brief based on desk assessment and the survey of beneficiaries. We develop the policy briefs that we plan to discuss with the stakeholders, including the government. We also use some letters, some meetings, workshops, through which we communicate our recommendations and our interests.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So, other participants?
Yeah, I'm sorry about the noise on my background noise on this computer. There's a sound system problem. Yeah, we basically have a process. I'm not sure that this is what you mean by tool, but we also use the public-private dialogue often as not the start point, because the start point is an issue, and then we will move to research, possibly some kind of survey. Then we'll move to public-private dialogue, and we've done a lot of these. Some with Ukraine and Moldova, actually, for GIZ. Then we write the position paper, as Russo said. Then we actually go to the parliamentary subcommittees to actively engage at it depends on the issue, but if there's a legislation being processed at the time, we'll go and attend the subcommittees where they're asking for input. So is that what you mean by tools?
Yeah, David, it's a broad definition of tools, and it depends on your, environment and your traditional approach, which you use, which is more efficient. So it's important for other participants to know what is the best way to present your cases. Starting from the issue, as you said, it's very important to formulate your issue, but you formulate any issue in a policy paper, policy recommendation, position paper, or just ordinary letter, right? It's just up to you how to do this. But
yeah, there's one other sort of tool in Georgia that we don't really participate in, but I don't know if you would define this as a tool, and that is would you say that a statement, an open statement, is a tool?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah. All right, and so we've only ever done one actually, but we have actually made a public statement. To do that, European Business Association needs to talk to its members first, but we've done that once. And then there's another tool that's quite common in Georgia, which is where people issue a letter or a statement. It depends on the language you use, but it looks like a letter often. And then you get multiple NGOs will sign this letter. Transparency International uses this a lot. Open Society use this a lot. So that I think, would you call that a tool? So we don't tend to do that because they're normally always wholly partisan and political. But it's normally like a lot of the NGOs are controlled by the government, or some of the NGOs are controlled by the opposition. So this gets very political. But yeah, okay. So that concept of a letter or a public letter. But we find, having observed this and researched this, that it doesn't work. So in Georgia, I don't know what it's like in Moldova or Ukraine, but in Georgia, these are just ignored. I mean, the press do it, but everyone just goes, oh, the NGOs are being paid to say something again. So it simply doesn't work. And that's why we concentrate almost exclusively on the PPD methodology.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, David. I bet that other members of our today's communication have something to add to this, but when it comes to Ukraine, right, we consider these open statements and letter very effective because of number of signatures it can have. So we have number effects, right? The number makes matters. If we have 10 NGOs or associations, where you have 20 or 30, when you have your case communication with stakeholders, the first question they will ask, who is behind you? How many people, how many interest groups, how many associations, how many? So you have to be ready to even present in absolute figures. We have 1,000 people, we have 20,000 people. So we have a letter with this number of NGOs. And when your first contact starts with, for example, lower level of secretaries, for example, this is something that we will start asking, who are they? Please provide their signature, please provide some proofs that you have people behind you, right? So it's very important. When it comes to open statements, of course, open statements is something you present on your platform, on your landing page, or it can be written, but it's open to other signatures. It's open to people who share this vision and can add their signature to your declaration or to your expectations from the government officials. Do these tools work in coalitions? So now in your organization, you have these kind of instruments. How you think coalition would articulate? Which would the best form for coalitions to present their cases? Shall we also open statement with some letters to identify stakeholders with some problems, different identification and solution suggested? What could be, is it different format for associations for your organizations and coalitions? Can it be different or should it be different? Yeah,
can I?
Sure.
Dennis, the situation is depending what problem you are discussing with the government. Yeah, there are some, let's say, smaller problems which can be solved by soft methods, writing the papers, and it can work. But generally, in all over the world, not only in post-Soviet countries, government know. Initially, they are most clever people in the country, yeah, and they know everything about you, even about you too. So when we were struggling, for example, this winter and spring period to open our industry, all country are struggling about this, but restoration system, we are the Association of Restaurants of Georgia. We have behind us 200,000 employees working in this, but this number, even this number was not pressing the government for this, and we in the same time press government as from the media. We every day make 3-4 times interviews and struggling and stating that this is necessary for not only for the business but for the country. But in the same time, we were standing in front of the government with the posters. In the same time, we were meeting inside the government with the several ministers. All these tools were using in the same time. We were shaking hands to them that we are waiting your solutions, but in the same time, we were struggling on the street. From media, from making coalitions, we make coalition about 7 additional from restaurants. We have tourism association, hotels association, high mountain resort association, so all guides association too. So all these were together. If it you gather together, it is approximately 500,000 personnel working in this coalition.
Kote, thank you very much. Very much is a very significant example. But what were the final outcome you expected from the government to be? It should be like order, resolution, legislation. What instrument, I mean, which normative act could have unblocked your businesses? Could have just move some fresh air into it? What was your coalition? The subject of your coalition?
Initially, governments were planning to open the hospitality business in June. We start struggling in February, and understanding that June is absolutely terrible big distance. It's 6 months, end of June. We say that it's impossible, and we just struggle every day. In March, they make decision that partially they open us. In April, they additionally make some lower the restrictions level. And from May, we start working more or less normally. But now again, we are struggling with the government because they are again thinking to close country. Not only our business, but again, the numbers of infected people are growing up, and we are afraid that maybe they will make again the steps to the quarantine and so on. So it's again, we are ready to struggle.
It's a government resolution actually that through government resolution they either open or close it. So it's about government resolution effectiveness or introduction.
So you have this centralized everything. You don't
Yes.
have like submittance power to the region to define the level of their scrutiny.
No, it's central. It's central government introduces the yes. Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, in Ukraine, we also have the same situation. We have a lot of people coming out to the streets and with all the transparency manifest all this time. But preliminary huge work was done before that, because we have some kind of advisory boards. We have council of entrepreneurs engaged. We have meetings with number of stakeholders preliminary held. We have draft resolution prepared, which because Ukraine wanted also at the central level to regulate the level of blockage of this, right? But then they gave in and said, okay, here's a resolution which would put a framework. What is the margin for this, right? But it's up to regional authorities to provide some kind of fluctuations, and changes to this issue. So it was one of the victory, and then it was advocacy and lobbying campaigns in the regions, just to work with the regional administrations and at the level of these normative acts in the regions. So perhaps it can be also done in Georgia, right? To have the power to region depends on the situation in cities, in separate cities, and to see how they can be to which extent open or close for this, or hybrid, or to which kind of industries it can be really applied these procedures. So as I said, I hope that you did also all this way, but we have several months, very preliminary, working inside and with the government, with our analysis, with our justifications before the resolution was prepared. But it's just one of the cases.
We have a good case in this field. Madrid, for example, is differently thinking than other parts of Spain, and this mayor of the city saved the city from destroying the economy, and she did not close the place, the city, and all Spain is destroyed economically, I mean, but Madrid is safe, and the people are praying for her, for the city mayor. Here we have a special working case with the city hall of Tbilisi, and we get some special, let's say, helps from city. For example, we were free, not paying the rent cost for the. Generally, we pay rent cost for the using the city spaces for terraces, restaurant terraces. Now, approximately 2 years, we are free of this charge. This first, and second, for small and middle-sized restaurants, they make the program 5,000 lari support from the city for all these players in Tbilisi. So we were trying to push this program to the other cities too, to help the Batumi, Tel Aviv, but all these city hall officials in the regions are sleepy, very, very sleepy, or maybe they die already, I don't know. But they don't push even a finger to help the regional restaurants in this case.
But you have a president, you know, you have a president with a very brave and efficient mayor, and of course he will get the support from the citizens for this, and you have to help to elaborate and to expand this case and to use the coalition efforts to the regions. As I said, you know, that cooperating with the regions is one of the issues. It can be like a substitute to very stubborn and very like monumental position of the government. Yeah, and how do you communicate these tools with stakeholders? So if open statements, of course, you just put in on a website, or letters just sent to the ministers, to the officials. Do you have the follow-up? How you process all these issues, ideas?
Again, we're using all tools in parallel with each other, all tools, because one tool to print the statement and to put it in the internet is not working at all. At the same time, as David said, public-private partnership, B2B meetings, and all these tools together, plus pressing the government from the other side, from the journalists, from the media sitting and giving the interviews. And so all these tools are necessary to use together, because generally government is, again, I'm stating this, that don't want to make any step because they think that initially it was very clever decisions made before.
Sure, you have to support the clever decisions, but say that you can do it even better with these changes and amendments. Let's see how some examples from Ukraine prospects when it comes to policy. So, for example, I saw one of the issues you mentioned in your interest is the public procurement, right? The reform of the procurement system. So, for example, we have KSE, is Kyiv School of Economics, who is with other stakeholders. They did a policy paper on, Prozora. Maybe you know the case of Ukraine Prozora, which with very digital case with public procurement. When it everything on the platform, it's open. You have the bids, you have all the information, it's open, and the government officials have minimum power just to identify the winner, because everything you have in the systems. So, but this system has also a lot of disadvantages. So one of the issue was to define them and fill these gaps. So the policy paper was prepared by this, and just see how it was prepared, right? With all the assessments, with all the argumentations, with everything. So it was just the first initial step of Kyiv School of Economics, just to present the policy issue for this. Of course, is at the next levels, it was the campaign organized, how to process these policy papers with stakeholders, how to make the government hear this. One of the other issues, when I mentioned about SME forum in Ukraine recent. So all the preliminary work with preparation of draft legislation was done. All the meetings with the members of parliament was conducted. Meetings with government officials were conducted because the government officials has a power for expertise of the legislative initiatives. I think the same in Georgia. So on this conference, which SAIP also organized and supported, it was just the head of the top pyramid, right, of this. So what would be, the benefits for members of parliament, for small, medium-sized business, for societies, if this draft legislation is adopted? The first one, which I presented to you, is draft law on market surveillance. I think market surveillance is also very important for Georgia, and especially in the framework of the implementation of European legislation, right? I think you have obligation for doing this. We have a lot of loopholes in market surveillance. There is a manipulation and abuse of power of government services when it comes to business enterprises, to cafes, restaurants, to manufacturers, to whatever. So this idea was to simplify and a bit diminish the burden on business by adopting this legislation. And actually, if you see, it was supported by USAID, by update by number of American and European funding projects. So you see, a lot of our infrastructure framework legislation is supported by donors community, by donors. I think the same situation in Georgia. Do you have available funds a lot, enough to present, to process your cases, to advocate your cases? Do you have a lot of donors funds projects right now in Georgia for these issues?
Yes, similar to Ukraine, there are a number of donors active in the fields that support the associations and provide some donor funds for the market survey and assessment. So, yes.
Thank you, Russo. And you know, here's a problem that donors associations in funds in Ukraine, they are looking for sound, prepared campaigns to support, because they are looking for something that they put as a, you know, as evidence for the efficiency of their taxpayers' money, of course. And we don't have so much projects in Ukraine, so, you know, well prepared according to procedures for the donors communities can, you know, can help and support. So I think that each sector of your interests which you advocate and lobby for can be relevant to donors as funds, relevant to Georgian economy, to Georgian social support, and you can definitely rely on this issue, on this source. And of course, you have members. You have also members of your associations with members membership fee, and of course, you can do this also for these funds. When it comes to the next case, is the labor regulation model for micro business. We wanted to ease the burden on micro business, not even the small business, but micro. And because we have a very strict regulation and labor regulation, we want to ease this. And again, it was everything prepared. It was all the preliminary preparations done and all the calculations, all the instrument presented, and now it's just time to present the case. And when the parliament is you know, out from the recess in September, start the campaign or to continue the campaign to push it in Ukrainian parliament. So here are the, like, you know, a few examples of our initiatives for policy instruments. Now, personalities, politicians, or stakeholders is a very important issue because it depends a lot of factors from this. We have to identify them. It's difficult to identify because, you know, when it comes to some issue, you think that is the maybe mandate or competitiveness of a separate ministry. But it can be also mandate and competency of members of parliament. It can be competency of president, because as the president, the guarantee of constitution, I think is the same in Georgia. You have to address the president and see that you have this professional campaign, you have this case, you have presented your story, now you are arguing and supporting your story. So that's why the president administration and their officers has to monitor and see what's going on. And at some extent, when they have already a broad and serious campaign, it can be very easy to get them on their side, right? Because they looking for resonance cases, very important for business, and of course they are dealing and thinking about their reputation and their voters, right? So it can be one of the issues to do. So when it comes to some sector, again, not work only with the executive branches, cooperate with branches across all the sectors, with executive, legislation, and president. Because when it comes to procedures, and we'll see it a bit later, they have a mandate and power to stop or push some at the level of expertise your initiative. And you have to identify who is responsible for your initiative at which agency, and starting from civil servants of the lowest level. Could you please tell me, do you cooperate in the ministries with the civil servants of the lowest not only with the ministers or the political officials, but civil service of the lower level.
Can you repeat, please, the question? Do we what?
Do you work with whom you work in the executive branch? With which level of decision makers? Which level? Usually.
Usually it's with mid-level, not with the high level like minister or something. They are very busy. And usually we deal with the like department heads or deputy minister level.
Mm-hmm. Our suggestion is to see all the executives levels in your ministry, for example, who is responsible for your case. How can you do this? Do you know?
No.
Just send the letter. Just send the letter and see how it will drop through the procedure.
You send the letter and you never get the response back.
No. Do you have a chancellery or secretariat of your ministry? Do you have a phone that we can just telephone them and ask, here's our registration number? Could you please say where is now our letter is at which level? Do you have this opportunity in Georgia?
I don't know. I've never tried that. Probably we do, but usually in my case, I've sent a number of letters. They said, then yes, 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 we will respond you back, but I never hear.
Is the same situation in Ukraine? But what we'll do, we send a first letter. Mm-hmm. We then, in a few days, just pick up a phone and ask the secretariat, could you please, it's on the website, could you please tell us, we have this kind of letter dated from this number is such, could you please tell us where is our letter is now? And they say, now it's at the level of deputy minister like this. Who is the executive of this letter? Who is the chief executive of this letter? Like, here's the name of this person. And also we are provided the telephone code. So we don't have any problems just to put the stakeholders map, for example, right? And to see where this level, where our personality, chief consultant is, at which level. But basically I can say that the most important people for us in the executive agencies are at the lowest level, not middle level, at the lowest. Because the lowest level, the first level experts or consultants, they have their most profound expertise in your case. And they will prepare a draft solution for this, or draft regulation or resolution, how to move it forward. And it depends on how you articulate the argument of your case, because before this chief consultant, for example, you know?
May I comment?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to comment on your suggestion. We had a very good example of what are you saying now. We had a case which was presented to the Ministry of Finance, and the Deputy Minister, the head of the the head of the departments were engaged, and then after a couple of months of working and very productive work, the problem arose from the IT department, and we knew that it wasn't the problem from above, because there was a clear approval of the suggestion, but unfortunately it became technically impossible to execute our recommendation, and guys from the IT department were not involved from the first moment. So the issue was maybe it was our mistake that we began from the above and not from below, because in case if we done so, maybe it could resolve some problems. Maybe we could win some time, and maybe it could evolve differently. So of course it's very important to have all the lines from above and from below also. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what I was referring from the very beginning. We know all the ingredients, right? But which ingredient we use is the recipe of our borscht. So you can want from the above, you can even meet with the president, and the president said, okay, great, guys, you're doing a great job. Please, I have all my executives here, and you go through the procedure, and you will end up with nothing. And if you go from the technical side, right, of your issue, very technical side, you see the first message is to identify. Identify across all the procedures is very important. IT stuff, financial stuff, economic stuff, legislation stuff, right? But as I said, if you just elaborate the procedure and approach, it will be for you much more easy than to go through it, to apply it. It's not very complicated. It's very difficult from the very beginning to draft a letter to Ministry of Finance and see who is executive in the ministry. To put here in separate, square, where is our lower, bottom level expert, middle level, and top level. There can be different squares here. Go to the legislature, Ministry of Justice, see where is our stakeholders there. Go into the financial, go to the IT departments, go to the legislation, go to the president. So stakeholders map is very important. It's very important to accumulate and to bring a lot of attention to it in the ground in order to avoid necessary redundant steps further. It's your resources, it's your expertise, it's your funds, it's your time, right? So if you go through these algorithms, it's much more easy to go through the procedure when you saw who are your allies. It can be so that one department is for and the other department is against within one ministry. And when it comes to the coordination of the position inside the ministry, you don't know about this. But the ministry, of course, you're persuaded, you're convinced here, you persuaded me. We will just remove this item, this initiative from our priorities, from our agenda. You will never know this, but you have to know. And with open resources, with these procedures, you can identify who their interests, who has positions. And do you know this approach, right, for the stakeholders map analysis? Do we apply this stakeholders map analysis in your practices, this approach, like on the screen? So you have the level.
Can I say something? Maybe yeah, this is very, very good. I haven't heard this before. And I don't know about the other associations, but we don't do that. So, I mean, I think in Georgia, there is a tendency for people to be very simplistic, write a single letter from a single organization, put it on TV, go to the minister, scream and shout. And what we noticed before we even set up, one of the reasons we set up the European Business Association was that we realized that approach simply did not work. So being the loudest screaming head on the TV was not effective because you see the same people screaming all the time and nothing actually changes. So I think what you're saying is extremely valuable. I hadn't thought about the departmental stuff. And the stuff from the Restaurant Association, I think, is a good example of how you can change government policy through a well thought through campaign, through an association and a coalition. So I think that that little piece we had earlier about what the restaurateurs did, I think that's a very good example of how effective it is. But certainly the stuff you're talking about right now, the analysis of the stakeholders and their positions within the ministry, I've not heard that before. So I guess speaking for EBA, we're learning something here. So I think this is very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your comments. But sure, they have power and they have interest. Your obligation and your assignment, if they have power and don't have interested, to accumulate this interested, to bring this interested, because it's up to them how to help you them, right? They have to be interested in doing this. And again, manage close is one of its top priority. They have power, they have interest, but they can also have interest in opposed to your case. They can just have a huge power to contradict and to be opposed to your case. So it's very difficult then to make them to transfer it on your side. But it's doable. It's doable when you have all this scrutiny and scrupulous this approach step by step and very technical. issue, because this is all technical issues here. So basically, if you have any questions with the stakeholders, we can stop on this, but we're running out of time, so we can move further, because I think that these stakeholders is one of the most important. Yeah, Pate, please.
Stating this page is very important for I can tell the situation what is going now. Our association is very actively coordinating and working with the Ministry of Economy, and we know their problem, that the government's problem, not only ministry, that the speed of vaccination, speed of vaccination is going very slowly, and we initiate our association that our members will through TV or word of mouth initiate that it is necessary, and it's very useful, because we have every day very much contacts with not understandable people, clients, and so on and so on. And the situation in our business now is better than in whole country. We are, let's say, in front of all, and this is why we are now, let's say, in front of all society, pushing them to go and be and make as much possible
as much possible vaccinated.
Чтобы они более активно, значит, шли и вакцинировались. This vaccination is now the main problem in Georgia, that nobody wants, even the doctors, even the medical people don't want to be vaccinated. And we are now, together with the government, pushing them to do this. Yeah, because if you are evaluating what is now on the today to close the country or vaccinated, we say that better to make vaccination more actively than close country. And we make this decision. We were sitting in front of each other, government and our association, and we said let's do and push this program. And now this is actively pushed, and it's absolutely where governmental needs and our needs match each other absolutely.
Thank you very much. Of course, it works, and you applied a lot of instruments for doing this, and that's why you advanced further than the other sectors of business. But what does mean stakeholders map and analysis means? It means that you have to build a trust, GR, government relations. You have to identify those who will manage close in this square and build a trust with them. So you build personal relations, professional personal relations with this chief consultant, with lowest level, with medium level. And when it comes to some information, they have to give you a call and ask, Pote, please, or David, do you have this kind of information? We have draft resolutions, but we need to fill in with some concrete, some examples from practical steps from sectors of business. Could you provide this? So you have to be helpful for them with provision of the arguments. So what is the main problem of cooperation between government and business? They don't consider business to be professional. They don't consider business to be knowledgeable in this, as you say.
Yeah.
They know better what they. You have to persuade them that you are so professional as them. Let us see how we can do this further. So further is the procedures. Procedures in the United States, we have said that this is the most important issue, to have understanding the procedures of your case, going through all the stages. Yes. because sometimes it happens that you see that it is this legislative level, but it can be bylaw level, it can be resolution level, it can be executive level, right? And vice versa. So, and also, if you see this draft legislation in the Georgian parliament, you think that you don't need to work with the executive branch. It's it's a mistake, right? You think that you don't want to work with the president's office. It's a mistake. You have to cooperate with all of them, right? Because all legislations, they go to expertise to the cabinet of ministers. I think that in Georgia is the same. It's up to you just to check it in your regulations. And when they have the expertise received from the ministries, from the cabinet of ministers, from the government, they can say whether they support this draft or don't support. You have to understand, using your stakeholders map analysis, identify who is leading coordinating your issues there. It will be much more better just to see what is the configuration of your coalition, of your stakeholders could be affiliated and relevant to your case. You see? And one of the secrets, you need to bring former public official in your team. You have to bring former public official who knows the procedures. For example, personally, I spent 3 years working in presidential office. I know the procedures. I know the procedures, how the office works with the cabinet, how office works with the parliament. I also took the regulation of the Verkhovna Rada. I studied all these 100 plus articles, and I understand now even better than many of members of Ukraine parliament what they have, which instruments of interaction with this legislation according to the regulation. I even advise them that according to article this, you have to apply this instrument. You are not permitted to do this. And okay, really? Let us just check. So you have to be knowledgeable in procedures, in regulations. It's one of the most important issues. Don't think that you don't need to do this. In your association, in your coalitions, you have to be very professional. For example, David, I bet the same situation with Georgian EBA, but Ukraine EBA, they even draft legislation acts with very professional approach, with very strong arguments, from business to deliver to the ministries. So basically, the ministries take the letters from EBA and put just copy-paste regulation to their draft normative act. Is one of the ideal of optimal solutions how you can be cooperative with the government. So this means this is the highest level. That means that they can hear and listen to you. And again, one of your issues and your assignments, not only to present your case to the government, but listen. I had the first meet and listen. It's very important for you to listen to the needs of the public officials. When you have the meeting, for example, with deputy head of ministry, with the head of department, or chief consultant even, just don't think about your case. Think about how you can hear what your vis-a-vis, your public official which is sitting at the same table, what she or he is thinking about in terms of their professional capacities, how we can be helpful to them. Because sometimes your coalition can help to get their consent from other ministries to their decrees, for example, which is also very close to your specifics, to your sectors. And you know very good, for example, the guys from the Ministry of Finance or Judicial Ministry, for example, which is compulsory their expertise. So, okay, we can help you just from our association, we can ask whether they support your legislation or draft bill or draft resolution. And it could be very good because you also have not to present your case, but listen what are the government, what the public official needs. I also was taught it in the US Congress, and I constantly, permanently use this practice in Ukraine also because I more listen than talk at the meetings. And they are very thankful for you for this because you listen and then help them to advise how to better execute their official positions and all this stuff. So please bear this in mind. that when you meet them, when you have this opportunity, not just talk, but listen and then try to help them to solve these issues. Do you have any comments for this? Because I think it's really important.
No, that's a very good comment, and that's very important that we can use. I have never tried that, honestly, but that's a good point that I will really start to implement in our lobbying process. Thanks.
What you're talking about here, one of the challenges we have in Georgia is that your previous slide said to bring people from the administration into your organization. So I think this is what you're saying, is that when someone with government experience is within your organization, this can help you understand the processes and procedures within the government. One of the challenges here, I think, is to make sure that you don't become a gongo. So like a bit like Ukraine, I think, and Moldova and here, the political situation is extremely polarized. And therefore, EBA has really, well, not tried, we have not allowed any politicians to come inside the organization. And also, so we've never made a political statement. We don't have any politicians inside. We don't get involved in politics. But I take your point that if we did have an ex-minister or something within the organization, he would actually know how to influence. So I think there's a challenge there in Georgia. You know, like how do you do that? You know,
but actually, by public official, I don't mean the political figure, former political figure, because of course it has different, connotation, reputation, all this stuff. I mean that former government official, technocrat level.
Okay, I mean thank you for clarifying that. And another thing,
absolutely this kind, because he would or she would be very technical, professional in their, not just building this political entourage or political campaigns. It's just all about the professional, specific and preparation of like your ideas and framework for this.
Yeah, and then the other thing the other thing I wanted to just quickly pick up and to finish my point was that, thanks for clarifying that. And the other thing is, I think one of the reasons that Kote's organization, the restaurateurs, were so successful is that because they did listen, I think, to the government. I think that's another challenge that we face, is that EBA often gets criticized by other associations for doing that. Like we don't confront. Our intention has never been to fight with the government. Our intention has always been to work with the government. And again, in Georgia, there is a tradition that you fight the government. And I think, again, it can be very difficult if you don't fight the government to not be considered to be not doing anything because you're listening. So it's not quite as simple as you say. I think the way Kote described the restaurateurs strategy, which was to sort of to help the government, in this case, like, let's get vaccinated. I think this is cutting edge stuff that they're doing and it's effective. But I just wanted to make the point, it's not that simple in Georgia to go to a meeting with the governments and listen, because often when the government do sit at the table, like we have this thing called the Investors Council, and what happens is they have a meeting, and then one of the business associations will run out of the door and start screaming that the governments are corrupt or something. So it's not that easy to do what you're saying, and to it's a balance. And just so you're aware, that's all. But what the advice you're giving, I think, is excellent. And I think that what the restaurateurs have done recently is a classic case study of how to influence government without necessarily just trying to start your own political party,
And that's absolutely true. I say you have to shift and transform your cooperation from rivals, right, to partners. And that's why you have to demonstrate on your deeds, on your activities, on your professional expertise. Then you understand the processes, which going inside the government. So that's why you need some kind of former technocrats for this, just to be a part of this. And of course, when, for example, the economy ministry will see former government official, a technical official in your as your staff or your consultant, it will be the different level of discussion already, because you know how the procedures works here. So that's why don't ask for something, you know, from space. Let's get down to more practical issues. So it will be more practical, more oriented to your needs. So that's the point, of course. And make sure you know the entire bureaucratic path of your initiative to the final document, which we just described. Help your stakeholders secure support for your initiatives at relevant executive agencies. Don't just initiate your, even if you found a champion in the ministry or in the parliament, don't just rely on this personality. Use all your resources, stakeholders map analysis, to help to advocate your case according to the procedure with all the relevant stakeholders. This will help this individual in the government, your champion, that will help to do this, because otherwise this individual would go through the ordinary bureaucratic level, from his or her level to head of department, deputy ministry, other ministry, according to the very complicated formal procedures. You can avoid this procedure. You can jump over the procedures, and on behalf of your association, articulate your again case with other ministries, and just get reported this information to these individuals who are responsible to have a feedback from others, right? As an initiative central executive agency. So accompany your initiative along entire bureaucratic procedure. So further process. A few words about process. Process is important. We often hear that we are interested in results, not in process. Here, the process is very important. Process does not always lead to expected results. It can lead even to something unexpected results, but very good results for you. It can open the horizons for your coalition, for your association, if you are going through this very technical, professional way. The process develops trust and support inside our organizations and coalitions. Because if we move along the process, we have to report back to our coalition members, to our business associations, what we did, what the problem, what was the barrier, how we can, resolve this issue. You have to advise. It's a permanent procedure of communication with them. And of course, process develops trust and support in us by our stakeholders in society. And we need to publicly record every stage of the process in order to be efficient. If you've done one stage, please publicly record. No, of course, you don't need to record, for example, your commitment of this chief consultant from the lower level of individuals in the ministry, because it's your job, it's your government relations efficiency and result. But when it comes to public stage, please fix and commit. This will demonstrate that, for example, you have a landing page of your coalition. Bring this information on the landing page, clarify the procedures, what you're doing, communicate with your members by different channels, but just inform them on this. Okay. A few words about resource map. Now I just want to stop share at this point and very briefly to demonstrate resource map, which is, I think, can be practically, where is it? When we tested it was, I think this one. Can you see it?
Yes.
So, resource map of a business coalition of Georgia. So this is something that you can follow this, pattern, but please adjust it to your needs, whatsoever, right? It can be Excel, Google Docs, for example, with one link to all the members of coalition, but it will help you to consolidate your resources. It has a few blocks. So it's a category and availability. So if you have available, that's this. If you have in demand or required, please put that you require this. Administration. Availability of own or rented premises for public events, round tables, conferences, and so on, indicating the maximum number of people for accommodation, technical equipment. It's just, basic stuff. If you have your coalition, if someone have the room, the venue, you don't waste money and time. You can just rely on and do your events there. Expertise, which is more important. Availability of own developments, recommendations in the requested area. area. So do you have internal expertise, capacity to provide, to elaborate policy papers, position papers, these open statements? Availability of full or part-time experts, analysis who can be involved in analytical and or drafting work. So is the options for your members of coalition, right? So people will just tick. We don't have experts, we don't have full-time, but we have, for example, third-party experts. Here's a name, here's a good reputation, we can involve this person here. Oh, that's very good. Because when it comes to expertise, it's very difficult in Ukraine to find proper experts, organizations who can do this. And actually, coalition very helps here. So communication. Sorry, I didn't translate this like so. Here's the translation below. Use of social media to relay the implementation of projects, indicated relevant pages and accounts, Facebook, Instagram. So you just can consolidate your campaign. If you put here the list of your Instagram or Facebook profiles or pages, you can just have it one place. And when it comes to public outreach, to communication policy, you can just copy paste and translate and articulate your message outside. It's the same with media. Actually, it was the media basically. GR at national level. Existing work relations with the main with management of regional and state administration, management of their structural divisions in your region. So very often, members of your coalition has working relations with expert groups, with city councils, as told, with some officials. Please, it's the matter of trust. You can put names here that I'm the member of this working group, I'm the member of this coalition. I have working relations with the mayor of the city, with the head of budget committee or whatever. Please put it here, and it will be your joint asset, right? Deputy is the same with executive. GR at the national level, existing working relations with people's deputies of Georgia, as well with officials of the secretaries of the committees of the Parliament of Georgia. It's very important not to have direct contacts with members of Parliament, but also with aides to members of Parliament. And more efficient is with secretariat, with technical secretariats of the committees, because they have the institutional memory and they have empowered for bringing an elaboration of draft legislation. So central executive bodies, participation of representatives of your association in the activities of relevant working groups, commission, advisory bodies formed in at the relevant central executive body. Then donor and international program relations, participation of your association in the relevant network, platform, coalition with international organizations, institutions, international technical assistance programs that may be useful to partners, and opportunity available to attract international expert consultants, implement your project. So members of our coalition can have some project grants, funding opportunities from different sources. It can be one source here to identify who can be your partners, who can be your donors, how can use these opportunities further. Does it make sense for you?
Yes.
Okay, I will stop share here this resource map. Sorry for having not translated this to items. I will do this, okay? And we'll send you translated. And just a few words about European ecosystems. Ecosystems and alliances in the system of government relations. New approach to consolidate and cooperate with stakeholders. European Union, European Commission now use very actively the instruments of ecosystems and alliances in cooperation with stakeholders. Everything is visible. It eliminates borders and communication barriers. You don't have any communication barriers. It is digitally oriented because everything on a website, you have a good structure. You see what are the interested groups, what are your stakeholders, what are your needs. It's very interesting how it works and allows for building stronger and bigger coalition. Right. So this is something very interesting for you to utilize here. For example, there are 14 ecosystems of European Commission in the framework of industrial policy, new industrial policy. And you can see here is a tourism, here is a logistic, here's a manufacturer, here's a craft, here's everything. A lot of different ecosystem presented here. Please find more information, elaborate on this, which is more relevant to your sectors, and find solutions and connections to these ecosystems, how they are being formed and developed right now. This is official, and you can just search information on the European Commission website and see how it can be actually elaborated. Some of alliances which are interesting for us in Ukraine, for my interest in terms of manufacturing, for example, European Cluster Collaboration Platform, Tourism Cluster, you know, other classes is part of this Cluster Collaboration Platform, European Artificial Intelligence Alliance, European Battery Alliance, European Raw Material Alliance, European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. All these alliances right now are structures in the format of like ecosystems, right? Here's just an example of such alliances. Shaping Europe's Digital Future. What does it mean? What is the stands for? It's managed by the DigiGrow, DigiConnect, and you can see all the information here. For example, Cluster Collaboration Platform, the Green Transition Facility. You know, now is a big courses for Green Deal and Digital Europe. For example, in Ukraine, we have a number of initiatives, legislative initiatives, how already put our manufacturers, our business in line with the criteria and requirement of Green Deal. However, we don't have the appropriate level of readiness, of capacity of Ukrainian economy in comparison to the European one, because they have received for dozens of years, 20 years, 30 years, significant assistance from the side of the government for this structural transformation. For example, in Ukraine, we don't have this. I think in Georgia, we don't have this, but it's a point of cooperation with these platforms and to articulate their cases and see how our relations with European Union can be further coordinated and directed, in particularly by participation of business associations, but small and medium-sized business. I want to stop here, and if you have any questions, so we can just have a brief exchange, if you're not tired yet.
Just a quick question. Does the timeline has an impact on how you influence the government?
Timeline?
Yes, I mean, like, for example, now we are close to the election period, and does this, like pressing the government through this policy advocacy and stuff like that, I think personally it should work better, because in the pre-election government is much more flexible and prone to do something for the public interest, or maybe I'm wrong.
No, absolutely right, Russo, because in Ukraine we have wonderful, I think, very effective campaigns. Actually, they were also led by SAIP. We have 5 requirements from business to elected officials with our cases. I mean, for protection of and present the interests of SME sector. So, for example, we have parliamentary election campaign. And when a candidate to the members of parliament, they met with business associations, the coalition of business, and said and committed that I, in my political campaign, will protect the interests of business, will do this, this, and this, like within 5 requirements. And it was also, everything was fixed on by public, by media. And so that's why it was much more easier for this personality who was further elected in the parliament to work with it. So we can just get back to your commitments, to your further, this announcement. And now let's think how we can just professionally do it and elaborate. Of course, there are a lot of them who failed to get to the parliament by their, were like top people in their regions, of course, and they had also like very good advocacy affiliation and influence on the local establishment. And further, of course, they knew you have, built this kind of relations, and further they would even appointed to some executive positions. You never know. So you have to address people, treat people like those who who can be your champion actually. So I think that's a very good opportunity right now for your coalitions, for your affiliations to work with candidates, to work with with campaigns and see and make them publicly committed to present your case, to protect, to advocate your interests inside public institutions when they are elected.
Thanks.
Any more questions, observations, comments?
I have one question or comment. You told that there are a lot of funds and European structures in Ukraine which are wondering to find a good idea to take it as a flag and after realize this as a program. And I think there is a lack of knowledge about such organizations, about such funds. Same in Georgia, for example. We know that such funds are in Georgia too, but absolutely we don't know who exactly is, for example, obliged for this or that program. For example, there is one such program, EU for Business. But we, during 1 week, trying to find the person who is personally obliged to realize this program in Georgia. It's absolutely not understandable that we know that they are obliged to help Georgia, but information is absolutely zero. How we have to find them?
Conte, can I feel this?
Sure.
I mean, as a Georgian.
Yes. Yeah. We know each other.
You're absolutely correct. But we've studied this for 4 years now, and we've just won €150,000 grant from the EU delegation in Georgia. So I'd be very happy to meet with you and to help you with this, because it's not something you can spend a week. It took us 4 years. and I've got people on my team who are the best in the world. I'm a mobile phone salesman, so I overestimate everything, but I think I've got the best NGO team in the country. So, and it took us 4 years to sort of really understand how it worked, and in filling out the application and in doing the contract, it made my hair go grey. So it was more. I lost my hair. It was much more challenging to do that than to grow Magticom from 200,000 to 2 million subscribers. I'm deadly serious. It was a lot more difficult to try to understand how it worked. But the good news is that it's actually extremely logical. There's a thing called a logical framework. And once you understand it, which requires a lot of study, and you need to understand the sources. But when you do understand it, and when you do it properly, then you can get money. And they are trying to do the right thing. I used to think they were just idiots, if I'm honest. And they must be just wasting money because I don't see any result. But actually, they are trying to do it properly. There is a system. I can tell you where the sources are. And actually, one of the reasons we're having the European Economic Cooperation Platform is to allow associations like yours to kind of get on board on this and to at least take some benefit from this, because we have funding for this. And but we will also try and teach you, how did it work? Who did we talk to? What's the process? And it's complicated, but I think it is a weakness in Georgia at the moment that there are new associations that are coming up, what we call a grassroots, like us. We are just a bunch of business guys and women who came together and said, we need an association that does what we wanted to do. And I think I can report that the EU actually wants this. They are trying to help, but they're a massive, multi-billion-dollar organization, obviously, $1 trillion, I suppose. And they have these very complicated procedures, and I'll show you how it works, but don't be disillusioned. I mean, you should do it because you run a great association. So I'll touch base with you and we'll have coffee or something.
Thank you, David.
I am very, very glad that our resources map starts working. So,
oh yeah, just a final statement from me. I thought that was one of the best lecture I've had this year. It was excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
So we ran out short of like our timing, right? So we.
Denise, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear this positive feedback and that David and can help Kote in some cases and others maybe who are also interested in this. So, and David's remark that this was his most interesting lecture this year. So I could agree on that. And it was very valuable in terms of, examples and advices and definitions that you brought up. And for me personally, this bringing solutions rather than, talking about the problems was the one that it was memorable and, is going to stay for me, with me for a long time. And also, like listening at the meetings was also very valuable. So, and much more than I can, say, but I really hope that all of you had something interesting to take with you. And Denise, I hope that you will be able to share your presentation with us so I can send it to our partners and everything that we use, the materials that we use today. And today's recording will be posted on our Facebook group, as it was mentioned before. So if you don't have any other questions, we can take a group photo as we mainly do. So if it's possible for all of you to turn on the cameras, please, so we can take a photo. Thank you. Wait a second. I have to push. Here you go. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, get ready. And okay, that's the first shot. Oh, actually, I have to push full screen. Yep. I think it worked. And one more, please. I'll just have to copy paste. Yeah. And one more. 1, 2, 3, smiles. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day.
I have
today.
to say thank you again. I agree with Tina that it was a very nice training for us, very good information we get and I think Dennis have some other topics too, which will be very interesting to hear from him, and we are ready to get some solutions. Maybe there are some already ready solutions, which is necessary to know for us too. So waiting your new topics, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the next time in Belize, please.
Why not? In our restaurants.
Inviting
all of you.
So is the first item in our resources map that we have a venue.
Yes.
And then donors opportunity for funding your project. So that's very good.
Yeah.
And last, and of course, in the middle we have a lot of other.
See you in Tbilisi.
Thank you very much. It was great, again, privilege to meet with you, to have this very intensive and interesting dialogue. And I wish you all good luck, and that your borscht will be very delicious.
And colorful.
Yeah, for all your stakeholders, and good luck, love and health, of course, and see you soon.
Thank
you.
you. Have a
Thank
nice
you,
day.
Denise. Thank you, Tina.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dennis. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thank you, Tina.
Дякую дуже, до побачення.
Увидимся в Тбилиси.
Увидимся. Дай Бог.
До свидания.
Thank you.